Hi everybody. We're going to get started with the next steps of setting up the character rig to its completion and creating a character set. So far this has been quite a tedious process of modeling, texturing, creating a skeleton, setting up the IKs, the reverse foot, the foot control manipulators, setting up new attributes, right? This one's the roll. And setting your arm manipulators that have several constraints on them, the IK parent constraint and the wrist orientation constraint. And the locator here controls the pole vector of my IK rotate plane. Now, if for some reason you're having trouble setting up the pole vectors and you go to your constraints menu set and it tells you that it can't find a pole vector, then you are probably using, is the pole vector constraint, you're probably using the IKSC, which is the IK single chain type of IK. So just go back into the attribute editor and change the IKSC to an IKRP. Now if that gives you an unexpected result or some kind of jump in your IK location or orientation, I would suggest recreating that IK. So this is where you can change it from SC to RP in your attribute editor. Alright, so all of those things are set up now, and I'm ready to go into the next lesson, which finally is called rigging. So many people think that just setting the skeleton into the body is the rigging procedure, but actually rigging is what you do later on when you set up control objects that are objects not part of the character but separate objects, like the circles on your feet and hands, and attach them by constraining them or set-driven keying them to your attributes within the character. It's sort of like rigging a marionette to a control of strings on a piece of wood that you control the marionette from. That's the process that's called rigging. So let's get started with this. If you have your textbook, it starts from page 374, and I highly suggest using the textbook along with the video so you don't miss any steps. Alright, so this file is right after we finished the arm setup on both arms and duplicated the roll, foot roll setup here. Alright, if you have any questions about that, please refer to the video I have for the reverse foot setup and the duplication. Now the next thing I'm going to do is a very crucial step. It is organizing your outliner, getting rid of unnecessary nodes, and putting all of your control objects under one node called the master node. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the top view here and create a visual indicator of the direction with which my character is standing using the EP curve tool. And that's going to serve also as a node that groups together all of my control objects. So I'm going to actually use the EP curve tool and make it a one linear, and I'm going to go ahead and use my X, which is snap to grid, and create a shape here that looks like a four-sided arrow. So let's do that real quick. Alright, so I'm just clicking while I'm pressing X. so it snaps nicely to the grid. All right, and I'm going to press enter. So I'm going to go back to the perspective view. With it selected, go to the channel box. Let's call this master, and I'm going to scale it down so that it looks like it's something that Romeo is standing on, right? And some of your models were off the ground, okay? And others of you had models that weren't centered on the grid. Now it's really important that you start with Romeo at the center of the grid, pretty much on the grid. And so if you're setting up a master node, make sure that that's happening. If it's not, you can group your pelvis all the way down to the foot manipulator. Don't group your geometry and move it. A group will allow you to move it and position it without anything coming apart or scaling in a strange way. Or you can use the master node here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go first to my master node and freeze transform so that I can get my translate, rotate, and scale values down to their default zeros and ones. Okay, this is a very important habit to get into with control objects. You want to always freeze them once they're in position and they're in the right scale. So I'm going to now group all of these control objects, IKs, in the top node of my bone skeleton, just the top node, my pole vectors and my curve manipulators, all onto the master node. So parent them onto the master by middle mouse dragging it in your outliner. So now this one master node can be used for moving your character and for scaling your character. This is a very important node to use for placing your character in your environment where you need him and scaling him to size. However, I want you guys to keep in mind that you're not going to be animating with the master node. The master node is simply a placement and a grouping mechanism. The only other thing that it would be used for is the smoothing attribute, which we're going to add later on. The way I'm going to organize the geometry is by going in and selecting the body and the groups of the eyeballs and the three objects that create the collar. Okay, so everything according to the geometry and then grouping it. Control G. If you go through this process and your eyes get dislocated and get placed on top of each other, it means you didn't maintain the grouping that they are in. So make sure that you go and select the actual top node of the eyelid and eyeball groups. Alright, I'm going to call this Geo group, and after I do that I have a master node group and a Geo group, and those are the only two nodes that I need. So you can take a look at this and I can get rid of the other empty nodes there. Master node and geometry group. This makes it a really nice and organized outliner. I can put them into separate display layers. Geo layer. Okay, and the master node can be the rig layer. Alright, so I'm going to move on and take a look at the tail joints right now. Now this part of the book just explains to you how to put things in a group. So right now I just selected the three joints that make up the tail rotation, and if I rotate this you'll see that my tail will move, my tail joints will move in unison. But I don't want to spend time looking for those joints in the skin and selecting them every time I need to move the tail. So I want to create in this case, they say a selection set. I would personally create a control object for this and then set it up so that it would control all three joints at the same time with a new attribute, but I'm going to just show you guys what the book shows you, because you can use this quick selection set for other things and it's quite useful. So I have the three tail nodes selected, and I'm going to go to Create, Sets, Quick Select Set. Okay, and I'm going to name this tail group, or tail. And what that creates is, in my outliner, a group here. Right? You still have to right click and go to select set members to select the set members. Okay? But I found this actually useful for animating things like the tail, but also if I have a lot of certain things selected. Like let's say I select a bunch of faces here. I'm just going to deselect the soft select here so you can see. And let's say I need that for something like a planar projection, or it's going to be a group of faces I'm going to use later on. What I can do is I can create a selection set, a quick select set with those faces. Right? And now all those faces will be in a set. So I can go in, expand my group, and create a selection quite easily. So I like to use it for things like components. I can also get rid of it by just deleting it.